I'm Melissa, and this is the Book Break. And today we are in my home office, and we get to be joined by a really prolific author who has a brand new book out that I can't wait to talk about. Her name is Heather B. Moore. So I'm going to bring her in. Hi, Heather. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So Heather, I've known you for a number of years, and you are a big writer. You come out with a lot of books, but you have a new one that just came out in the last week, and it is The Paper Daughters of Chinatown, right?
Yes. So it's basically about a woman named Donaldina Cameron who goes to the mission home in 1895 in San Francisco, and she's agreed to teach sewing for 1 year to the Chinese women and girls who are there that have been rescued from slavery situations.
And we have a picture of her, and this is the actual doll. I'm going to call her Dolly because that's what she went by, right?
Yeah, she went by Dolly or Miss Cameron at the mission home. And these are some of the women that she worked with on the staff. And they literally would go into Chinatown, into brothels, into homes, and they'd rescue women that were asking for help.
That's awesome. And then let's look at a picture of the house, the mission house. And they have actually now renamed this. This didn't used to be called the Cameron House, but they renamed it, right?
Yeah, it was called the Occidental Mission Home for girls. And after Donaldina retired, she worked there. She ended up working there her whole career, basically her whole life. And after she retired, they renamed it to the Cameron House in honor of her.
That's awesome. When I was reading the book, one of the things I thought was really interesting about it was she went to Sacramento after a broken engagement, and she thought she was only going to be there for a year, but she had no idea. And she was even thinking like she might find someone to marry while she was out there.
Right. She was 25. Yeah. So she was 25. She had been engaged and had broken up, and all of her siblings were married and moving on with their lives. And so she thought, okay, I'm going to go to San Francisco kind of as an adventure. I'm going to work for a year and maybe figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life. And then Miss Culbertson, who was a director at the time, she invited Dolly on some rescues. And Dolly, her heart just went out to these young slave girls, and she was offered another year contract. And then that just ended up becoming her entire career. And she actually had another opportunity to marry a few years later. When that didn't work out, I think she just had her heart so much in her work, and these girls really became her daughters. And even though she went through a lot of hard times, a lot of setbacks, she just pushed forward day after day in this work, and she really made a difference. In my book, it covers the first 13 years of her work at the mission home. But obviously, she spent decades there, and a lot of her work, kind of after my book takes place, ends up being in the court. She was involved in all these court cases of securing these girls' freedom, and she also had a lot to do with women's rights and human rights in San Francisco.
Yeah. Well, and when I was reading it too, it was so fascinating to me that she actually went in these dangerous situations and helped to rescue these girls. And I think we have a picture of the alley, like an example of this is a picture of her actually going up into a house to rescue someone.
Yeah, so this picture was done for a newspaper, so it's a little bit staged, but it's exactly what they did. Like, they would climb ladders, they'd go through skylights, they would bring hammers and sledgehammers and axes to break down doors. And this was in the late 1800s. And so by by about 1910, more and more laws were put into place. And then these criminal gangs that would abduct these girls from China and Hong Kong, they started getting their own lawyers. So then it became court battles. So in the beginning, it was really just kind of like the Wild Wild West.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me because I was thinking about how she would go in there, and I was amazed that I don't want to give away too many spoilers of the book, but I was amazed at how successful she was and in rescuing these girls. I mean, I think of today, and unfortunately, we know that human trafficking still happens today.
Right.
And I would imagine that going into those places you're really putting yourself in harm's way, and you could really get hurt. And she didn't really like she didn't care. I mean, she cared if she got hurt, but she really cared that she would be there to rescue someone.
Yeah, and throughout the book, you learn that she really put her trust in the Lord. I mean, obviously, she was being as safe as possible, but she did get death threats, and she did have the police with her most of the time. They're called the Chinatown Squad, and so she had them kind of as protection. But there were a couple of times when she was really on her own.
Guys that
Yeah.
helped her. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a picture of them. They're real men. You can see them with their axes and sledgehammers, and they would accompany her on her rescues. There was one time, though, when it was during the bubonic plague, and Chinatown was in quarantine, and the only way she could go and help someone was to sneak through the barriers and to crawl, like maybe not crawl, but she would go through the skylights and walk across the roofs. And she would do those on her own with an interpreter. So she didn't have the police with her then.
And then when they had the girls at the mission home, people would try to come back and get their, you know, I hate to even say the word property because no person is property, but that's what these bad people thought of these women as. They would kind of come back to, and they would try to come to the mission home and get them.
Yeah, so what would happen is a slave owner, his girl would be rescued, and so he would go to the police and he would claim, oh, she stole jewelry from my house. And so then they would put a warrant out for the girl's arrest. So they would go to the mission home, they'd knock on the door, and I think we have a picture of the door, and it's the same set of doors from the 1800s. They were able to save these after the fires that were a result of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. But it's not the best picture because of the sunlight coming in. But if you look closely, you can see the imprints from the door bolts. There are probably about 7 or 8 imprints on this door. And so what Dolly would do is she would say, who's there, whoever knocked, and then she slowly, one by one, turn each deadbolt. And this would give the girls, she had a little warning bell she sounded. It would give the girls that had slave owners still after them time to run into the very basement and to hide in an underground tunnel. And
you had a secret tunnel.
Yeah, we have a picture of the tunnel. I went down, so I visited about a year ago, the house. I was able to take some of these pictures. And the thing about the Chinese, some of the Chinese had the superstition of basements. They're afraid of basements. They thought demons literally lived in the basement. So you would think, why didn't these slave owners just look in the basement? Well, they're petrified to look in the basement. So that's why they're able to hide down there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's so amazing. And then one of the things, I keep saying one of the things, but you did a lot of research for this and you had readers help you with this. And tell me a little bit about your alpha reader that you had. And for our viewers, what is an alpha reader?
The book started out, it was going to be about Donaldina Cameron, and she's actually from Scotland originally. She was born in New Zealand though, and then her family ended up moving to California. So I thought, oh, I can write this. But as I went along, I felt like we really needed a voice of one of the Chinese girls who's a paper daughter. And so I thought, okay, so this means I need to get what we call sensitivity readers so that I'm able to write the story, this point of view and this young Chinese woman's point of view, and to make it feel more authentic and to not put anything in there that I don't realize might be offensive, but it could be offensive. So I talked to Allison Hong Merrill, and she's actually a writer too. And she is an amazing writer, and she agreed to be one of my readers. And then another lady that I had just met online, Angela Singh, and she was also one of the readers too. So that was a huge blessing to me to have them read and give me some insights and some feedback on my book before it even went to the publisher.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking to us about this. This is great. And you're on social media and your website, and you have a book club kit, right, on your website?
Yes, so it's a free download. So if you're in a book club and you want to download the discussion questions or additional information about the book, you can just download the PDF and print it off or send it to your book club as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Heather, for being here with us. It's been great.
Thank you so much.